Welcome to Mastering Agility. If you want to listen to authentic conversations with the most inspiring guests, find like-minded people in the Mastering Agility Discord community, or both online and face-to-face events, this is the platform for you. Grab a drink, sit back, and join professional Scrum trainers Sander Dorr, Jim Sammons, and their guests in an all-new episode.
Arie van Bennekum, thank you so much for your hospitality, for having me in your home to record this episode. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. We just talked about a minor injury that I got. But, the leg is doing fine. I'm fine. I'm having a good time back home after a trip again. So, I'm fine. Thank you.
I can imagine you're a super busy guy because, you're one of the legends in the field. You're one of the signees of the Agile Manifesto. You basically synthesized Agile, the ways of Agile working. Do these articles now, in the last couple of years, on Agile's dead, Scrum's dead, blah, 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 do they frustrate you?
On one hand, yes. And the people who write those kind of things are the people who most likely have never seen it working. I know that you're an Agile coach as well, right? So we visit our clients, our companies, and you can see the difficulties that organizations and people have to leave old habits. So what you see very often is still a waterfall with fragments of Agile working. Of course, all the Agile words, but really, getting full Agile and getting the benefits from full Agile, whatever full Agile means, if you work agnostic, you rarely see it. And from that perspective, I think Agile is not dead. I think Agile is quote unquote like a toddler, and it really still has to grow up. And whatever people say, the capabilities in Agile is what we're going to need in today's world. And I said that already 10 years ago. The pace of change, blah, blah. Technology, of course, we talk about it. Look at the last couple of years with AI coming up, the importance of big data, but also geopolitical. It has impact on what we do. It changes markets, business models, laws, and you have to respond to it. And if you don't, then you're dead. Not Agile, but you're dead, right? As an organization, yeah.
No, I fully agree with that, because many organizations that we see as consultants or trainers or wherever, they don't really apply agility as it's intended. Now, for those who are listening, how would you, as one of the creators of Agile, summarize what Agile truly is?
If I go back to the moment that we wrote the manifesto, what a lot of people forgotten or maybe never even knew, when we were in that room, I think there were 13 different frameworks in the room. Jim Highsmith, shortly after writing the manifesto, wrote a book about it. And you can see that every framework has a focus. We all say in our frameworks that we tend to cover everything. But the three major issues, the quality of what you deliver, the business quality, the value, potential value, the efficiency in the way of working, and the technical quality of what we deliver, there are focuses. And I think if you really want to, my opinion is, and this is how I work, if you really want to be Agile, you need to apply practice from the different frameworks, because every framework has that one specific thing in one of those three areas. And then you assemble. Per team, it can differ how you do it, right? It can be different. That's not the point. But this is what Agile for me is. So Agile is not, I always get the creeps when people say, we're writing an Agile playbook. Because before you know it, the playbook tells you how to do Agile, which is not what we intended when we wrote the manifesto. It's about one, you have to look what helps you. And two, you go into that rhythm of continuous improvement. So there is not one fixed way. The only fixed way is that you continuously move forward. Right? So Agile is not that. Agile is needed more than ever. And of course, you have the connection with the digital world and with AI and with the big data. And, I always say if people go into digital transformation, when you're in that, you can't do without Agile, with the capabilities that I just mentioned. So Agile is not that. And when we wrote the manifesto, there's a lot of things in there. And since then, there have been, new things, new innovations, new ideas, new concepts. And you need to cherry pick from and assemble your way of working. And I think that's also what we intended. I don't think I ever really worked from one framework. from that perspective. I always used practices from TDD and from extreme programming, even from Lean and also from Scrum, and of course from DSDM, what I represented when we wrote the manifesto. And that's, I think, how we intended it. And that continuously moving forward, continued innovation. It's not the same, and it will never be the same. Tomorrow is a different day. Tomorrow you might need something different.
But this is interesting as well, right? Because people don't really, or organizations don't necessarily seem to grasp the concept of what Agile truly is. And then they start moving beyond that. I see big banks, for instance, say they're now Agile 3.0.
Yeah.
And they start laying off Scrum Masters because in Agile 3.0, you don't need Scrum Masters. And without truly understanding what they're trying to do, what Agile is in the beginning, or the semantics do matter in that sense. And it's the same with the idea of a transformation. With a transformation would imply to go from one state to another. And it feels like it has an end state. And I think that's something that many organizations don't truly understand. Like, it doesn't have an end state.
Well, that last line, let's start there. Because people ask me, how long will the transformation take? If I go, because I just told you before we started the recording, I'm working on 3 proposals at the moment for full Agile transformations. When is it done? Now, I can say it's never done, which is basically true, but that's not what the client wants to hear. I think the client is looking more for, okay, when we are we in that good, mindset altogether? And basically, when can we get rid of you as an external supplier with coaches and etc. Right? And I always say, okay, in my case, that will take, let's say, 6 to 18 months. And then my people move out and they are on their own feet. They can do the work themselves. They have all the Agile professionals like the product owners and the Scrum Masters and the people who know how to develop and test. And even, the whole thing, laying off Scrum Masters, what you just said before. One of the things that I think is really a difficult one for me is that for me, in an Agile team, you have to be able to step in for each other, because it can't be that if you're the Scrum Master and you get sick tomorrow, that the team is on a standstill. That's insane, right? So for me, every person in a team is capable to do multiple roles. Scrum Master is a role. And that role needs to be fulfilled. That needs to be done. There's for me, there's great value in that role. So we need to focus on that and move forward from keep on moving forward. The moment that we are out, what I think is okay. In my opinion, the transformation is finished. Sometimes it's not finished, but the client wants to be on their own feet anyway. Also fine for me. But it's you enter the world of continuous improvement, and that's a difficult one because people are used to the old school quality manuals. How do we do the job? So now we have described, and this is why I have that sort of thing with the Agile playbook, is that there's not one way. You have to be. If there is one way, it's the mindset of continuous improvement, right? And that means that next sprint we might work differently from the current sprint. That's the situation.
Mastering Agility only partners with organizations aligned with our values, and that's exactly why we're excited to work with our sponsor, Scrum Match. Scrum Match is a recruiting platform created for and run by true Scrum Masters and product owners. On Scrum Match, true Scrum Masters and product owners get hired by companies serious about creating more value faster using professional Scrum and product ownership. Right now, they're hiring for a client with exciting Scrum Master vacancies in Paris and Lyon, France. In this role, you'll coach cross-functional teams to deliver cutting-edge digital products, leveraging Agile, data analytics, AI, and Lean UX. Enjoy a hybrid work model, a competitive salary, and the opportunity to thrive in a collaborative, innovative environment. Are you interested? Sign up on Scrum Match and sprint toward your dream job on scrummatch.com. How do you feel about these companies? How do you feel about these companies laying off their Scrum Masters just blindly? Because the Scrum Master doesn't add value, right?
Now, I think if that's what they do, they didn't understand the concept, number one. And number two, most likely because of this, they put the Scrum Masters in the wrong position. Because the Scrum Master is only a Scrum Master. So now it's not a role, but it's a function in the descriptions of the functions that we have in the company. Now, we don't need that function anymore. No, but you do need the role. Right. So, and I know one company, will not mention the name, they had the same thing with done like this. They fired them. And then 6 months later, via the back door, they came back in because they thought, oh, we missed something here. Yeah.
It's such a weird concept because you don't see any professional football team laying off their coach either, right?
No, what is it like 15, 20 years ago? The hype of coaches came in, and mental coaches and life coaches. And,
sure.
But I think everybody needs a coach. And the coach is helping you to reflect in that world of continuous improvement. And that's not only in your work. It's also as a person in today's world, you want to improve, right? You want to be able to handle the situation that's coming to you, whatever it will be. And if it happens and something happens that you have not experienced before, you will learn from it and you will change. And it's good to reflect on those. And a coach is maybe a big word in general, right? You can also have very good people who know you and they help you to reflect. But I think I think the metaphor with the football team is a soccer team, whoever is listening. A sports team, you don't fire your coach, you need your coach, right? And you can see that coaches make a difference. So I'm not understanding this on one hand. On the other hand, it's like people are just applying old habits. That's what they do. And the thing is, if you go into a new way of working, a new way of behaving, you will encounter situations that you have not encountered before because you do something that you didn't do before, right? So if it goes wrong, which is most likely the case, because if you do something for the first time, you will make mistakes. You don't have the solutions. Right? The only solutions that you have in your brain are the solutions from the past, from the old way. So that kind of innovation. And in those situations, if you have somebody next to you said, hey, I've been there, I've done that. What you could do, try this, try it. If it doesn't work, let's see how we can refine it to something for you that works. And then you need to people who have that knowledge. So in terms of agile coaching, you need agnostic coaches. If whether it's the value or the efficiency or the quality, if you have your issue somewhere, that somebody says, okay, I know this one practice. Let's start working on this one.
I think that's an important distinction between a coach and a mentor, because what you're describing here is a mentor, and many coaches, coaching in itself is putting yourself out of the equation and have the other person find their solutions. Where this brings in more experience, like this is what you could try, this is what we've tried with other organizations or with other teams, and therefore, try, apply, see how it works, and if it's something for you. And I think that's an idea that many people don't necessarily apply or think about. Like, how can we make that shift, but also anchor these practices? Now, you were talking about your own assignments, thinking about maybe 8 to 16 months. What is it?
6 to 18 months, half year to a year and a half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you ensure then that you anchor these practices, that these toddlers will be able to walk on their own when you leave?
Yeah. So when you talk about coaching, I have very high standards when it comes to the people that are on my team's coaching. And it's especially understanding what type of coaching that people need. So in the beginning, I always, coming back to sports, I always make the metaphor. I remember when my younger son, and he's now almost 29, right? But he was 7 or 8 and he was playing soccer in the Netherlands. And I was his trainer, of course, because, the daddies jump in to help out. And you had those friends of his, and they would join the club and they would come into the team. And yes, they have seen it maybe, in the street but that's different from playing an official soccer game, right? Okay, now we're doing something different. We have a collective here working. And so in the beginning, you're very strict on, okay, this is how you take a corner. This is how you take a penalty. This is what offside is. You need to be very strict on the content, on the rules of the game. And then after a while, if those settle in, then you get, okay, how can we refine and improve them? So you start talking tactics. And then you have people who are maybe in a position that they have never been before. Maybe they're in a position that they don't like. Now the one-on-one coaching comes in. And then you shift from the coach who really tells you how to do it. Then you move to the coach that will help you to identify, okay, how do I fit in here? What is my role? Okay, and by the way, I like it here, but I don't have all the skills. Okay, what skills do you miss? Okay, and then you start improving, and that can be with formal, maybe with trainings or whatever. And so as a coach, you need to have that angle that you understand, who have I in front of me? Is it a group? Is it an individual? Where is this person or this team? What is the kind of coaching that they need? and you have to able to provide it. Have to be able to provide it. And I think that also explains why real agile coaches are extremely good people in their profession, very skilled in multiple aspects of what we do.
How does character come to play in this? Because still skills can be taught, right? You can learn skills, but character is a lot harder. Now, you already mentioned that you're looking for a very specific type of people, like you have high expectations. What kind of characteristics are you looking for in the people that are on your team?
Yeah, so if you ask me, okay, what kind of people that I would like to have working for me in my teams for me, I always start. You have this basically like a conversation that you and I now have is, okay, what's your general knowledge? Where have you been? What have you done? And of course, I want to hear from them that they know more than just one framework. That's number one. Now, if this is not the case, that can be fixed, right? That's not the point because that's knowledge. So that can be fixed. And the next one is the character is like, okay, so here we are. Are you somebody who is able to reflect on yourself to see, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is maybe because I think the most important thing for anybody is knowing what you can do and knowing where you need help from somebody else, right? But that takes sometimes courage to say, okay, now I need help. But it also helps you to assemble a very complete team because then you can find the people that complement each other, right? So I want to have that skill and of course I want people to understand how coaching works, how the human brain looks at change, which I think over 90% of the people in general will find a way to, consciously or not, resist to the change that's coming. I never heard so many yes buts in my life, right? So, and then you need to find a way to have them open up to at least listen and experiment in the collective where they are and moving forward, and then helping the collective forward. If somebody on that team drops out, is not able to keep up, then the individual coaching comes in. So those are the kind of skills that I look at. And what's for me also very important is that Agile is based on the rituals or the ceremonies, if you like. That's communication between people with different interests, right? If you do it properly, you have people from different quote unquote languages, some literally different languages, together in a room, but they have to work towards the same objective. They all have their own ideas. Now you have to bring that together. So the skill of facilitation is for me extremely important. Process facilitation in group sessions.
How do you deal then with these organizations that are like, Agile doesn't work here, or the people that you have these layers, the product teams or Scrum teams, if you will, or whoever's actually building the product, they're usually the people who are expected to change, and the layers above them, they're like, change is for thee, not for me. You got to change, I don't.
Yeah, so my talk that I had the day before yesterday, and not just that talk, so because almost all the time I get things like, "Oh, do you tell this to the management as well?" That kind of quote. And I also say the leadership team, and it's not just the top leadership team, but also the leadership teams that are below that. You have three very explicit roles in both transformation and an agile organization and delivery. Right, number one, you need a role model because more than 90% of the people don't like change. It's very difficult for them. But the moment that they see somebody that they trust, respect, and it's more senior than them doing it, then they were more likely to start at least trying, right? So that's number one, you with the role model. And on that level, the organization needs agility as well, but at least people will, more easily take the change. Number two is, sometimes you have changes that you need to do in the organization that are formal changes. The way you document, the way you accept, or the way you collaborate, or whatever. And those changes need approval somewhere in the organization. And it cannot be done with the people in the teams sometimes, right? So they need to facilitate change. And number three is they need to sustain the change. And that means that if something goes wrong, and things will go wrong because they're going to do something that they're not good at yet, right? So things will go wrong. They have to avoid what I call innovating backward, right? We know how we want to work, but something went wrong. Okay, we have to find a solution. And then they grab in their brain an old solution. And before you know it, you're back to where you came from, right? That's what you don't want. And that's where management needs to step in and facilitate the team, retrospectives, obviously, right? To do this and to understand this and to really apply it. And what you see, for example, very often is that management layers will say, we are so busy, skip the retrospectives this time because. And I think the retrospectives are essential in the success of any team, right? And that behavior of people from the higher senior levels is standard, right? Because that's the old behavior. And people in those positions are the people that are longer in business. They got to this position because they worked in the company 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, right? And their paradigms on the old stuff are so strong, and they need to let go. And that's why when I do agile transformation, I start with the leadership team. That's where I start.
Do you ever come back to an organization and see that they relapse basically in their legacy behavior, and you're like, why was I here?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I've seen it literally, right? You do it, the thing that you do, and it works actually pretty well. And it's not perfect, but now this continuous improvement starts. And there are two very toxic moments that can happen to a team, right? The management steps in and says, okay, we're going to do this differently because this doesn't work. And they implement all solutions. Or people are coming into the company or the organization new. They are not familiar with this way of working. And they start demanding old school stuff. The document streams of the waterfall or whatever. And then you come in after a year and a half or two and you hear all the agile words and you see a complete waterfall in front of you. And that's, it pisses me off.
Yeah.
I can't say anything else. Now, the company where I was earlier in this week, I know a few people from the management team already because I worked with them on a successful transformation a couple of years ago. And they are now have moved together with a substantial group to another company. And I think, okay, if we're going to do this could be a big success again because they know how it works. They know what is required. So I have good hopes on that one. I really would like to take that on. Yeah, absolutely.
Both Jim and I are experienced consultants and trainers. Therefore, we know how important it is for organizations to have the fundamentals in place before delivering high-value products. And this starts with understanding the theory behind whatever framework, method, or process organizations apply. And this is where Zebia comes in. Zebia is a pioneering software engineering and IT consultancy company, transforming and executing at the intersection of domain and technology to create digital leaders for our people, clients, partners, and communities. As a gift for our Mastering Agility audience, they provided us with a discount code MA10 when signing up for their open enrollment classes to get 10% off. Go to zebia.com/academy to find the entire curriculum of courses. That is Zebia, XEBIA.com/academy to find all their courses. But it's also super hard to not converge into like organizational practices already. Like we see that a lot. Like people come in with the best idea, great energy. They want to do good with the organization, but it's really easy to merge yourself into the organization, and it requires a lot of conscious choices and on reflection on your own behavior to prevent that from happening. Now, if you do that if you indeed you're part of an organization for 18 months, let's say, or maybe even longer, it's very easy to slip into that. What kind of practices do you use to prevent that from happening?
Now, first of all, I think it happens to almost everybody, right? If we don't really transform to a new situation, no matter how long it takes, you have to continuously battle all the old habits and all the old resistance. And at one moment in time, you blend into the organization, you get used to the bureaucracy and that you have to go to 5 layers before you get a decision on something. All this, it happens all the time. And this is why number one, I always say to my client, I really want to build also a strong community of internal agile coaches, but then real agile coaches, right? Not something that we're sitting in the corner doing nothing. Okay, let's make you an agile coach. But people that have really that ambition, who really want to do it, right? And then you keep on mentoring them. Yes, after half year or a year and a half, we move out, and you hope that it will stay, but we can't guarantee. When it comes to my people, I also know, and maybe you have the same experience, but if you come into an organization, you have extra power, more power than the people that are in the organization because you're from outside. They brought you in to do this. So, okay, we listen to you, at least in the beginning, right? And then after a while, that starts to fade away. So what I like to do is, I also like to swap my people. If I have more than one transformation going at the same time, what I do is I sometimes, for 2 weeks, I swap them wherever they are in the world. And then they bring in that new extra energy at the place where the other one just left. You can reflect on it when you're both in your old position again and bring it forward, right? So there are things that you can do. And swapping coaches, replacing coaches is one of the things that can help. Not because they are not good coaches, but at one moment in time that you know that the impact is going down a bit. And then maybe it's a moment that you can do this.
And I think it's good as well for like a refresher, but also to get fresh perspectives into the organization. And, I've just tried this in this organization. Yeah. But coming back to what you were just saying, like these more waterfall kind of practices, one of the things that stands out in many organizations to me is, for instance, a PMO, the project management office. Do you feel there's a proper place for PMO in agile organizations?
It could be, right? It depends a bit on the size. I don't like size of an organization as an excuse to reinstate old habits. But if you look at, the way that you keep track of your progress, right? So we have burn downs and plan boards and backlogs, and we have to see, okay, what has been delivered, what is in progress, what is not, which teams are working well. There are dependencies between them. So I can imagine that you have a PMO office bringing all that information coming together all the time. But it's what they should do is facilitating the teams and bringing that information that the organization need to keep track on where they are in their, the day-to-day tactics and strategy, instead of being that PMO that tells people how to do it. And that's most of the time what a PMO becomes, right? And that's what it absolutely should not be.
Could you say in that regard that the PMO could be a great support to, for instance, a head of product, where a head of product helps coordinate across multiple products, and this feeds back into what a head of product is doing?
Yeah. And I've seen it working, but then that PMO has to be really that team, but it's most of the time a couple of people that really facilitate the teams to continuously bring that information together. Because if you do it properly, that information is almost real time available, day-to-day updates at least, right? So if you can find the process to keep that together and facilitate the people in there, so that those who run the company are ready to, if something happens, I mean, I don't have to explain what's happening in the world at the moment. It impacts. Look at, tax, import taxes and whatever shit happens. That means, okay, now we need to do something, or, we need to change our market, or we need to change the solutions that we have because the tax rates are different. Okay, how are we going? So now we need to do something. The people who are on that level responsible for the organization need to have all the information together to see, okay, where are we? What are the teams working on? And what is it that we do now? And I think from that perspective, that works. And then you have the leadership also working in an agile way on the overall portfolio, connecting strategy and tactics to delivery, because that's what needs to happen.
So when does leadership come in this whole transformation? When do they come in?
Before anything else, I always start with the leadership team. So my way of working is that I always say, if you want to say, okay, we want to do a transformation, that's like, okay, I want to be able to run, let's say a sports example again. I want to be able to run half a marathon in a year. Okay, can you do me a coaching program to do so? Yes, you can do this. But I don't know how fit you are. Maybe you are already capable of doing it some sort of way. We could improve how you do it, but maybe you're not even ready to walk a mile at the moment, right? So, okay, so now we have a different starting point. So I always start with assessing the situation, creating a transformation backlog from there forward, right? And while I'm assessing the situation, knowing that with my client, teams will go into transformation, including the leadership team, by the way, I always start with the leadership team already during that assessment process, because the moment that teams go into transformation, the leadership teams already need to know what will be different. What is that they will see happen? What is that they will see in the reporting area, the information that they get to run the operations? What is it that they have to do and maybe not do anymore? So I want to prepare them for that. So I start with the leadership team ASAP.
How often do you see that the leadership or leaders are not actually leaders. They're laggers because they're usually the last ones that get trained.
Yeah. So the point is with me, then I go into the conversation and everybody will say, yes, you're right. Do this. And then you plan, like 2 to 4 hour sessions with the leadership team. And there is always, if in the first session, somebody is not there, that 9 out of 10 in the next sessions, that same person will also not be there because they have an excuse. So you have to have a backup measure to get the dragon back in. Because then okay, this person will be a pain in the butt for the rest of your transformation.
You can swear in this podcast. We do all the time.
Yeah. But this is really the situation, right? So you have to identify. So yes, again, the leadership team before anything else. And it's not that if you've done a couple of sessions with the leadership team that you're done. No, also during that assessment process, there will also be a work defined in coaching ways regarding the leadership team. But I want to have them ready when the first teams go into transformation to at least understand what's going on. Right? That's number one. And then you have the leadership program going on, and you do also coaching by the coaches also on the leadership teams. Sometimes there are more leadership teams.
Absolutely. So making that full circle, coming back to the sorry. Megan. Die gaan we eruit editen.
Ja, die knippen we eruit.
Inderdaad. So coming back to the beginning of this conversation, making it full circle, we need everyone on board from top to bottom and start with the leaders to ensure that this is actually going to work. And now we started talking about Agile is Dead conversations. But apparently they were, in many organizations, Agile was never live.
Yeah, that's the way you can say it. Yeah, and that's something that people need to realize. I always say, because the biggest problem with the traditional ways of working, the way of working has embedded that you create delays. Because of miscommunication, you deliver the wrong thing. So you need to do rework. Inefficiencies cause time loss anyway. Technical problems need rework. That kind of delay you can't have. And I always say, if you're late, don't worry. Competition will be on time. And you're out.
I like that.
And if you look, so yesterday I was in the car and then they were talking about the European automotive industry. And they suffer because they are behind on, for example, and maybe mostly the automotive industry in China. And it is because of their old ways of working and their old bureaucracy that whatever they do at the moment, they will be late. And this is something that they need to understand. And I think there's time. I think they can catch up on it, but they have to start acting now.
Yeah, they need to start moving to a more of a get shit done mentality instead of follow process mentality.
Yeah, it is whatever you say. It's very bureaucratic at the moment. One of the problems that they have in the automotive industry, that they have so many suppliers. So how do you do innovation? How do you do change? On the products that you have, it's very difficult. So you have to reinvent yourself.
Absolutely. To wrap this conversation up, we have the ChatGPT question of the day.
Oh, okay.
Today is, what is a decision you made in your career that in hindsight you would approach completely different today?
I mean, there are so many, right? Especially on the personal level, the way do you respond to things, the way that you took a stand against, other people in a situation. That's where you think, oh man, I should have. But I'm a very emotional driven person. So right? When it comes to making decisions in my life, it's more about that I don't regret the most important ones in my life. I made career change, from working in the healthcare, and then I got into the military. Then I became a software developer, and even in that, from that day, it was 1987 forward, I made a couple of severe changes, leaving behind what I had. Okay, I'm going to restart and reinvent myself. The one thing that I regret, but it's not one decision. The one thing that I regret is that sometimes you want something really badly, and you're going for it. Your gut feeling tells you, this is not a good idea. And you do it because you want it so badly.
Yeah.
And I had it a couple of times in my life, and you have to listen to your gut feeling. Now, the problem with your gut feeling is that your gut feeling can be ruled by fear. If you are somebody who's afraid of change, your gut feeling will always tell you, don't do this, don't do this. So you have to find that balance. And even recently, with Early Friday, I made a big change. Frits asked me, okay, you want to step in, and be a partner in the business with him? And I thought, am I going to do this? I'm over 60 now. Am I going to do this again? And I thought, yeah, it feels good. Let's do it. So it's more that, trust your gut feeling, but understand that your gut feeling sometimes can be a little bit troubled by, traumas from the past. Let's do a little bit psychology here. Traumas from the past. So you have to find that careful balance. And then we come back to something else that we said. And that's find a coach. And it doesn't even have to be a formal coach, but find someone who is capable to reflect with you and is not afraid to ask you the painful questions to keep you sharp, right? And I think also I did, and that's really in hindsight, that I did too many things on my own. And there are so many beautiful people out there who have great ideas and will help you to reflect. So use that.
I think that's a perfect way to end this conversation. Arie van Bennekum, thank you so much again for your hospitality and for being on this podcast for the second time, because you were one of my first guests ever on this show. I think you were the third or the fourth episode. So I appreciate you being here again.
All my pleasure. Welcome in Newport.
That is all for today. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, let us know by hitting that like button. Share it with friends and colleagues, sharing a message on LinkedIn, joining our warm and welcoming Discord community, or attend recordings as a virtual audience. You can find all the relevant links in the show notes. We hope you'll tune back in for the next episode of the Mastering Agility podcast.